and Kaylin, back again with Double Talk, but this is also the start of something new. If you've caught us on the Shorts tab here on YouTube or on TikTok or Instagram, you might have seen that we brought back the show that got us started here on YouTube, the Didja Know Show, but in a slightly different way. One thing is still the same though, and that's that we want to share with you guys all of the interesting things that we come across every day. And there's a lot. When we were little, we had what we called a research box, where we just printed things that we found interesting offline and put them inside. Think of the Didja Know Show as us opening up that box. So here's our first compilation of the 25 most intriguing oddities and stories from all corners of the world that we found over the last couple of months. Did you know that sunflowers have been used to clean up radioactive materials, like those released in the atmosphere during the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster in Ukraine in 1986? On that fateful April day, the plant's number 4 reactor, which had a flawed design and was operated by someone relatively untrained, exploded, releasing 50 tons of hazardous materials including metals. And you'd never believe it, but sunflowers can actually extract these metals from deep in the soil, purifying the area around a nuclear disaster. It's the same reason they were planted near the Fukushima disaster site. Once the sunflowers are grown, they're safely disposed of after plant material and the toxic material are separated, and the toxic metals can be safely stored underground. Did you know that there is no red in this photo? Not even a single pixel. If you don't believe us, we'll zoom in. So what's going on here? This illusion is an example of color constancy, which highlights the fact that color is very literally all in our heads, or more accurately, our brains. In this example, you are so used to seeing a Coke can as red that your brain fills it in, because we have an uncanny ability to perceive colors as relatively constant. It's the same reason why a red apple will still look red to you even in a dimly lit room. Is this reminding anyone of the dress? Actually, never mind, let's not go there again. This might be the most interesting thing we've seen all week. Did you know that there's a creator on Instagram and YouTube named Paper Pepper who makes lifestyle videos and tutorials, but in a paper doll kind of way? As in room makeovers, recipes, skincare, hairstyling, and desk organization. But everything you see, from the water to the snipped hair to the nail polish, is a paper cutout that Pepper moves around on screen to make the video come to life. If this is the future of lifestyle influencers, I'm kind of down for it. At the very least, there's no comparing yourself to a paper doll on Instagram. Well, at least I hope so. You've probably heard microplastics mentioned in the news, but what exactly are they? Well, did you know that microplastics are defined as plastic pieces less than 5 millimeters long that result from the disposal and breakdown of consumer products and industrial waste that end up in the environment? There are primary and secondary microplastics. Primary microplastics have always been small, like pellets that fill toys, microbeads that used to be found in toothpaste, face cleaners, and body washes, or clothing fibers. Secondary microplastics occur when larger pieces of plastic break down. Fortunately, in 2015, the US banned the use of microbeads, but microplastics are still a huge problem, especially for ocean or other wildlife that mistakes them for food and eats them. The best thing you can do now to help, according to the NOAA, is simply to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Look at this photo of Margaret Thatcher, the former Prime Minister of the UK. What about it, right? It's just upside down. Well, not quite. Check this out. What's going on here? This is a demonstration of the Thatcher effect, or the Thatcher illusion, a phenomenon where it becomes difficult to tell changes of a person's facial features when that person's face is upside down. It's named after Thatcher because Peter Thompson, a professor of psychology at the University of York, first used that photo of Thatcher to demonstrate the effect in 1980. Why does this happen? Basically, we're programmed to recognize faces as we normally see them. We aren't programmed to recognize these facial features upside down, so we just process them as we normally would if they were right side up. If you're like us and fascinated by urban exploring, you'll love this. Did you know that there's a Wizard of Oz themed park on Beach Mountain in North Carolina that has been closed on and off for decades? The park, called the Land of Oz, officially opened in 1970 and closed in 1980 after a financial crisis and a fire in 1975. In its glory days, the park saw visitors from Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher to Muhammad Ali. But this is where it gets interesting. In the 1990s, the park began opening only once a year for an Autumn at Oz event, with proceeds from ticket sales going to restoring the rundown park. It'll even be back this September to continue the tradition. Things are looking fairly nice now, at least from photos on the park's website, but there's something so eerie about seeing the place's ups and downs over the years as it came in and out of care. Did you know that the world's deepest swimming pool, called Deep Dive Dubai, is nearly 200 feet deep and is designed to resemble a sunken city? The 14 million liters of fresh pool water is about 86 degrees Fahrenheit and is filtered with a state-of-the-art water purification system. It's stocked with 56 underwater cameras, and in the pool you're able to experience everything from a breath-holding free dive to a snorkel, or even a full scuba diving adventure. You have to book your experience in advance, and it looks like among the cheapest options are a facility tour and a snorkeling excursion at around $109 each. The most expensive is a guided scuba dive for around $490. Would you guys ever give any of this a try? I think for me the submechanophobia is taking over, but I also don't think I'd turn down the terrifying chance to just splash around in there. Did you know that what you're looking at right now is one of, if not the most dangerous objects known to man? Nicknamed the elephant's foot, this 2.2-ton mass was found about 8 months after the 1986 Chernobyl disaster, inside a corridor between the faulty No. 4 reactor that caused the nuclear meltdown. The mound is made up of corium, which has been formed naturally just a small handful of times in history, because it only occurs when nuclear fuel and other parts of the reactor core structures overheat and melt together. The elephant's foot is so toxic that anyone who stood near it for a few hundred seconds around the time it was first discovered would almost certainly die. And it was so dense that it required shots from an AK-47 to break apart parts for analysis. At that point, the mass was only photographed by what was essentially a camera and a selfie stick from around several corners. Its toxicity has diminished over time, but I still want to drop by for a visit. Have you ever wondered why you can sometimes smell the rain before it comes? Well, did you know that what you smell before a storm is likely ozone? According to Scientific American, ozone is a sweet-smelling form of oxygen made up of 3 atoms rather than 2, like most oxygen in the atmosphere. It can also come from natural sources as well as pollutants, which is normally what you think of when you hear the word. Before a thunderstorm, downdrafts carry ozone from higher altitudes to where we can smell it. Then, once the storm begins, you'll begin to smell molecules of things like plants and trees, and concrete and asphalt, that are disturbed by the rain and carried into the air. Finally, you'll smell the earthy scent of geosmin in the soil, which is produced by blue-green algae. Does knowing this take away or add to the magic of the scent of rain? If you saw this plant in the wild, you'd probably do a double take. You might even scream. Did you know that the California pitcher is a real plant that's also called the cobra lily? I'm sure you can see why. It's famous for looking just like a cobra snake ready to strike. Cobra lilies are native to the western United States and typically grow in bogs or stream banks that are fed by cold mountain water. The plant is carnivorous, meaning it eats insects like beetles and flies. Unfortunately, they probably can't be charmed like other cobras, but maybe no one has ever tried. Did you know that there's an extremely rare type of apple called the black diamond apple that's such a deep purple it looks black and is white on the inside? They're a rare variety of the Chinese red delicious apple, can only be grown in the small city of Nanki in the mountainous region of Tibet, and the apples are only exported throughout Asia, mainly to large Chinese cities. Its unique color is due to the region's high altitude of over 3,500 meters, where temperatures temperatures fluctuate wildly between day and night, and the apples are exposed to a lot of UV light. The trees can also take as many as 8 years to reach maturity and start producing fruit, and then only do so 2 months out of the year. If you do find yourself in a specialty store in China, you could expect to pay the equivalent of between $7 and $20 for a single black diamond apple. If you live in New York City, or have visited in the last few months, you may have encountered this poster. And if you're anything like us, you may have wondered if the joke started and ended with the sign, or if the mysterious masked man was really going to conquer a tub of cheese balls in front of an audience. But did you know that on April 27th, 2024, the anonymous 22-year-old did in fact show up to Union Square Park and down about 13 servings of the cheesy snack in front of a crowd of adoring fans? Cheeseball Man revealed to the cheering crowd that he was actually allergic to gluten. He also expressed his concern that the NYPD would show up and arrest him before he could complete his mission. Cheeseball Man savored the snack all the way until the literal bottom of the barrel, and it looks like a new tradition may have been set in motion. He has already promised to return in 2025, claiming he will eat 2 entire jars next time. Did you know that Punxsutawney Phil, the legendary groundhog who has been predicting when winter will end every year since 1887, recently became a first-time dad at the age of 138? In March 2024, Punxsy and his wife, Phyllis, welcomed twin babies, a boy and a girl, the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club announced at the time. And now the club is asking fans to choose their names. Anyone visiting Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania between April 30th and May 9th will have the opportunity to drop their name suggestions in boxes placed around town. The club will reveal the chosen names of the new bundles of joy on May 12th, Phyllis's first Mother's Day since giving birth. What would you name them? Let us know below. The title of the worst video game of all time is subjective, but did you know that there are a couple of them that many people agree on? First up is 1988's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for the NES, a side-scrolling action game that Eurogamer once said is so bad you would almost think it was designed to be terrible. Not only is the game mind-numbingly boring, but confusing because nothing is explained to the player. Next is 1999's Superman 64, which was panned for being repetitive and too difficult with clumsy controls, serious glitches, and poor graphics. The developer defended itself by saying that the licensor only allowed them to use 10% of what they planned. Finally, 1982's E.T. for the Atari, which is heavily mocked for its graphics and dull gameplay. It was reportedly coded in just 5 weeks in order to come in time for the holidays, and truckloads of E.T. cartridges were later found buried in a landfill in New Mexico after they failed to sell. Did you know that the deepest sinkhole in the world is between 1,677 and 2,172 feet deep? Located in China, the Zhaozai Heavenly Pit, as it's called, has vertical walls and even contains a waterfall at its mouth during the rainy season. A 2,800-step staircase has been constructed in order to facilitate tourism to the sinkhole, which has been well known to locals since ancient times. The sinkhole formed over the defunct cave, which was formed by a powerful underground river that still flows underneath the sinkhole. 1,285 species of plants, including the ginkgo, and many rare animals like the clouded leopard and the Chinese giant salamander have been found inside the hole. Did you know that in 2008, a man listed his entire life for sale on eBay? In the wake of his divorce from his wife, an Englishman named Ian Usher took a drastic approach to healing, offering his life for sale on the online marketplace. He valued his massive lot, which included his house, hot tub, and rundown car, among many other personal items, at up to $500,000. Unfortunately, the highest bid ended up being $399,300 Australian dollars, and that deal, as well as those of the other 6 top bidders, all fell through. Although his life for sale plan didn't work out, Ian's life after divorce did. He wrote a book on his controversial listing titled A Life Sold, tackled 100 items on his bucket list in 100 weeks, and bought his own private island in the Caribbean. Not bad for a man with a plan his ex-wife once described as a bit mental. Did you know that toward the end of the first season of the HBO docuseries The Jinx, Robert Durst famously admitted that he could not tell the difference between his own handwriting and that of the killer of his friend Susan Berman? After the shocking scene aired, a journalist interviewing Durst after each episode said he believed the real estate heir was preparing to leave the country. But as Taylor Swift once said, nothing good starts in a getaway car. The LAPD tapped Durst's phone and traced him to a hotel in New Orleans. This was only a stop on his way to Cuba, where he planned to flee. Durst was arrested on a warrant that directly resulted from the evidence presented in The Jinx, though the court of public opinion believed his overheard utterance of, "I killed them all, of course," to be a confession. Durst maintained his innocence. He was convicted of the murder of Susan in 2021 and sentenced to life without parole. Durst died behind bars on January 10th, 2022. If you've never heard of the r/desired path subreddit, it's very niche but very interesting. Here's probably the most fun example we've seen. Did you know that this is a photo of the walkways at the Oval at The Ohio State University? We had to say it like that, we were raised Buckeyes. Before and then after they were paved. As the story goes, all the way back in 1914, university architect Joseph N. Bradford waited until winter to do any paving, just so he could go up in a hot air balloon and get a bird's eye view of the trails that students had been forming in the snow as they walked around. Well, this formation was then made into an actual network of paved walkways. See why they call it a desired path? Did you know that there's a 7-Eleven store in Monterrey, Mexico with a tree growing from the floor through the ceiling? A sign on the tree roughly translates from Spanish to English. It was decided to keep this walnut tree inside the store to respect it, take care of it, and motivate other buildings to do the same. According to 7-Eleven, the Living Tree, as it's called, inspired the company to make the store eco-centric, and it became the first LED silver convenience store in Latin America and New Mexico. It's got an air renewal system that works using a wheel, is water efficient, and has sensors that detect daylight. That means that when it's sunny, the artificial bulbs dim and allow natural light to fill the store. What happens when you ask artificial intelligence to visualize a unique dog species based on each of the United States? Recently, the Pet Lab Co. decided to find out. The project produced 50 AI-generated images, with the design of each dog inspired by the state's history, culture, geography, and wildlife, and they each have their own names. A spokesperson for the Pet Lab Co. noted that surprisingly, many of the dogs AI created look like medium to large breeds, with only a few of the states represented by small dogs. This doesn't seem to correlate to the geographic scale of each area, as Texas's dog is among the smallest created. Definitely makes you wonder. So which one is your favorite, and which one do you think is the most accurate? We've probably all heard creepy stories, real or not, about the Paris catacombs, but what exactly are they? It all began in the late 18th century when major problems tied to the city's cemeteries, translation, sinkholes, and health problems due to too many bodies, led to a decision to transfer the contents of the cemeteries. To house these 6 million corpses, authorities chose locations that were easily accessible: underground, abandoned mines. There are no headstones or markers for bodies in the catacombs, no matter who you were or when you died. Millions of bodies were shaped into tunnels, archways, and walls, which makes for incredibly eerie imagery. Starting in 1809, the catacombs were open to the public by appointment. Now they're open to everyone and welcome nearly 550,000 visitors a year. Did you know that some of the oldest human footprints in the world were recently discovered on a Moroccan beach? Researchers found the nearly 80 footprints believed to be 100,000 years old in Larache while studying boulders at a nearby pocket beach in 2022. According to a study published earlier this year in Scientific Reports, they appear to have been left during the last ice age by 5 Homo sapiens, including children, and are believed to be the oldest in North Africa. The only certified footprints that that are older are ones dating back 150,000 years found in South Africa, and ones dating back 120,000 years found in Saudi Arabia. This makes the footprints found in Morocco the third oldest ever found. I wonder what we can learn from following in the footsteps, literally, of people who lived so long ago. When you've reached the very top of Mount Everest, the highest peak in the world, what do you see? According to those who have summited the mountain, the top of the world is actually cluttered. Victor Vest, who summited in 2010, noted in a Quora post that there's a little jumble of snow and other stuff that marks the actual summit, and it's only gotten more crowded since then. First, the summit is covered in prayer flags, which are left to show respect for the mountain and pray for the climber's safety. Climbers also often leave behind heavy equipment they no longer need, like oxygen tanks, climbing gear, and even food and drink packaging. There's also a small metal plaque that commemorates the first descent by Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay in 1953. Fortunately, there are ongoing cleanup efforts by several organizations to help tidy up the mountain. Did you know that the very first Taco Bell is still sitting on a stack of bricks in a parking lot behind the Taco Bell headquarters? Taco Bell Numero Uno, as it's called, was opened in Downey, California in 1962. It was closed in 1986, but the restaurant was saved from demolition and driven down the road about 30 miles to Irvine in 2015. I really wish I could have been a ride-along on that trip. There's been talk of eventually finding a new place to put it, but for now, you can go check out the building at Taco Bell headquarters. People say that while it's technically private property, there are no gates or guards, so you can see it if you go, but the building is often covered with tarp for protection, especially when it's been raining, so be careful. Did you know that the Oshima-Ohashi Bridge in Japan, which looks impossibly steep in photos, is often called the scariest bridge in the world? But looks can be deceiving. The 1-mile concrete road bridge runs over Lake Nakomi, linking the cities of Matsu and Sakai Minato. The reason it's so steep is because it was built for tall ships to pass by underneath. But while some photos suggest a slope as steep as 45 degrees, the actual gradient is only 6.1% on one side and 5.1% on the other. What's the secret to those crazy photos then? It's all about camera tricks, like photographing the subject from head-on and from a low angle. Also, if you do a little bit of searching online, you'll see a lot of discussion from many people who say they've had nightmares about this exact bridge, even if they've never seen it before. Have you? Thank you for joining us on the Didja Know Show, and as always, let us know if you come across anything you'd like us to dive into. Till next time!